Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope you all have full tummies and you've been able to explore all the different floors. I've been looking all over the place and wandering into magical bits where I go, what does that do? And I hope you're tweeting and putting stuff on Instagram as well. Don't forget, it's @Tech7 and it's hashtag Tech7. And there are those 4 Amazon Echo Dots, I believe, that are available for those that get the most retweeted and the most seen and liked. So make sure you're doing that. Now, I've seen the rehearsal. It was a little bit like a pantomime, so I'm looking forward to this in particular. Please put your hands together for Councillor Simon Harris, Emma Murdoch, and for Chris Huntingford.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm Simon Harris, for those who don't know me. I'm from Broseley, which is the capital of the world. Thank you. There you go. I'm here to talk about the Broseley project. It's got another name called the Living Lab. This is all about how to introduce technology into elderly people's homes to try and increase their well-being. And the way that this started out, for me, was during my election campaign. I ended up at this lady's house and she said, Simon, you'll have to come inside and have a look at this in my bedroom. So, and I've had that invitation before. So off I went into her bedroom and she's got this device that looked like one of those old-fashioned Nokia phones. And she goes, it measures my heart rate. I said, but I can't get the damn thing to fit in its holder. Every night I have to phone up my son, who comes from Wenlock, comes all the way over to Broseley to fit it into the holder. Well, do we really have to go through that again? This is awful. We are at an age now where our technology is just going through incredible stages. And to have the elderly people trying to get the size of Nokia phones in holders in their bedroom is not the way forward. So how do we go forward? Well, this Hitachi project is the way forward. And this is moving on. This is developed over the last year. Shropshire Council, Hitachi, and Broseley, the capital of the world. There you go, see? We're going to do a bit of a wave in a minute. So we have partners. And as we've moved on, we've developed this. And we have the Lady Forrester Hospital, which is I'm a trustee on. We've got Hitachi, the likes of Amazon, other people involved, and all the officers at Shropshire Council, and it has been terrific. One of the things that has come out of it as we've moved on is how the technology is advancing faster than we've ever thought. How do we control this technology to enable old people, the elderly, to live in their own homes? And this has come about by listening and talking to them and asking them what they need. And we have developed a catalogue of equipment that can suit different aspects of people's lives to help them in their well-being as we move forward. And have I said enough? I think so. I'm going to hand you over now to Emma.
Hello everybody. If you've been to our stand-up on the 3rd floor, then you notice that I get a little bit passionate when I'm talking about it all. So I apologise if I get too passionate and somebody will shove me off the stage. First of all, I wanted to give a bit of a background as to how all of this started. There was a talk that was done by a member of staff. He's already been on the stage, Richard James. And he was doing a talk about the equipment that could go into people's homes to support them. After that talk, I went to go and speak to him because I'd had dealings with, personally, a Raspberry Pi and programming that. And I felt that that could go into people's properties and support them. After going to speaking to him, I was pulled in a bit further on the project from housing. And I've been looking at lots of different tech that we can put out there. With the support of the IT team, I think that we've got a good package now that we can send out to people. And that's what we're going to plan to send out to Centre?
Broseley.
Yeah, no, capital of the world, that was it. I remembered the Broseley bit. I also have a personal opinion on all of this. My sister is only 55, but she's very poorly, to the point that we're not sure how long she's got left. She also has to have permanent oxygen, and sometimes when I give her a ring at home, she'll start to sound like she's had one too many, and whilst I realise that she hasn't, it's actually an indicator that she's not got her oxygen attached, so I need to tell her over the phone to put it back on. The problem with that is, what if I didn't phone her that day? What about if it had gone too far? Her sons hadn't come home and she'd had a fall. Who would know? Her 2 boys are old enough to go out to work now, so they're not there for most of the day. And she has a carer that will come in for a couple of hours, but it's just not enough. So I wanted to make sure that we could put something into properties like my sister's so that we can make sure that people are looked after. So there's lots of different pieces of kit, and my watch that I'm currently wearing is supposed to monitor heart rates, but it's also tied up to the Ring doorbell and keeps telling me that people are walking past our stand, which is starting to drive me a bit mad. I need to change that. We've also got the Echo Dots that we'll be putting out into people's properties. I don't know whether anybody knows of the Echo Dots, but they're the little Alexa device, and people will be able to talk to those. We've got the Echo Shows that we can put out, and those have a nice screen on them so that people can talk to their family members. We also want to make it so that they can tie up to their GPs, and is part of the project that we're setting up in Broseley. So with that, we've got 10 volunteers that live in their own properties, and they will be having the devices, and we've got a further 10 volunteers that live in a care home, and they will be having the devices, and then we will send an Echo Show to the local GP, and they'll be able to undertake their appointments with them. I wanted to tell you about my sister on that, because I wanted to make it clear that it can happen to all of us, and it's not just waiting for when you all get older, which I'm afraid you all will, but it's also to other family members that will also be affected, and we need to make sure that we've got things out there that can help the people that are in those properties, but also support the families as well, because I worry about my sister every day, and I'm sure that there's somebody, more than one in this room, that's going to have somebody that they're worried about at home, whether it's an elderly parent or a dependent or something like that. The Broseley project, we will be getting data in from the devices that we send out to all of these people, and what we wanted to do is look for patterns in that data. Now, we had Hitachi working on site on another project, and they were kindly offering their services to be able to help us with that, and I'll let Chris tell you about that in a minute. From the data that we pull from these devices, we can make sure that we can locate patterns. So the patterns could be that we put sensors on a door, and we know that that person gets up at 6:30 every morning. We're all creatures of habit. We always, well, sometimes we might have a lie-in, but most of the time we do the same things pretty much every day. From those sensors then, we can monitor that you get up at that particular time. So if your normal time is 7 o'clock and 7:30, you haven't passed the sensor, is there something wrong? We want to be able to send you a message to say, are you okay? If you are, you answer and say, yes, I'm fine. If not, you turn around and the alert will be sent off to somebody so that we can check on you. We've got fall assistance, so the device will strap to your wrist, and if you are liable to have a fall, it will set the device off. If you've just caught it, it's got a timer, so it counts you down from 10, and if you don't hit that button to say, actually, no, I just banged it or whatever, then it will send a notification off to somebody else. Make sure that you're looked after. The other devices will pull various information, sort of times, to pass from one sensor to another. And in that way, if that time between those two sensors get longer and longer, it means that your gate's changing. And if your gate's changing, you're liable to have a fall pretty soon. So that's all the information from our side, and I'll pass you over to Chris.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Wow. Don't know if I need a microphone or not. So first of all, my name is Chris Huntingford. I'm a solution architect at Hitachi Solutions. The accent is South African, just in case you're wondering. So no, I'm not from Australia or New Zealand. So first of all, I don't know what I just pressed. Oh, there we go. So I was warned that the clicker is a bit dodgy. It's actually the user. Anyway, first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much to Shropshire for including us on this. I mean, it's amazing to work with you guys. And something that I noticed is that the amount of innovation that's going on in this place is insane. The capital of the world, Broseley, how do you say it? Broseley, that's it, guys, I'm sorry. I am foreign, don't judge me. Anyway, so the obligatory company slide, everyone has to do it. Hitachi Solutions are a business transformation partner. Now, quick one. Who here has been on a Hitachi train? No one. Okay. Who here has bought a Hitachi TV? No one. Okay, we don't do either of those. There we go. Good, well done. So we don't do either of those, right? We provide business transformation. And essentially, our goal is to kind of, I would say, contribute to society through the development of superior applications, technology, and innovation. Okay, so that's my company slide done. If you guys want to chat to me about it a bit later, I'm more than happy to do that. One thing that we thought we'd focus on, and Emma, thank you very much for bringing up all that information around the IoT processes and things. I don't have to do that now. So what we've done is we've built out a bunch of demonstration processes using IoT alerts. Now, don't freak out, this is not the Big Brother type of thing. What we're focusing on is utilizing technology to connect people to people. Okay, which is really important. So if you think about the scenario that, Mrs. Miggins might have hurt herself, she doesn't have to go and call somebody up anymore. She can call out to Alexa and say, phone my next of kin, or call up the local authority and get somebody out to help me up. Now that's really important because you're automating that process in which people are connected. The other thing that's really important is to be able to put analytics on top of all of this to understand different behavioral patterns. Okay. Now again, it sounds really crazy and machine learning, but that is something that's really happening. So it helps you understand your members and your customers better. And we've got all of this live at our stand. I know everyone's been irritating Emma walking past and her bracelet's been buzzing because of the alerts, but that's great because it proves it works and it's real. So I'd like to say to you guys, thank you very much for coming. To the people that are presenting today as well, great job. The innovation happening here is nuts. I love it. And please pop by our stand, and we have sweets. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And a particular thank you to Emma as well, sharing that story about her sister. It brings it home, and we send her a very gentle hug as well from all of us here. Now, I just want to, if you are here to see Daniel Rolls, the digital marketing guru, he's going to be doing his talk at 2:30 on digital marketing. Are you ready? In the Hayden Smith room, just so you know that's happening. Right now, though, I'd like to introduce to you Biodose, please. Would you like this? You don't have to. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Bryn Morgan from a company called Protomed. We have a medication management solution for people living independently called Biodose Connect. But rather than squeeze my 15-minute presentation into the next 4.5 minutes, I thought I'd just talk to you a bit about the information that I've gleaned when I've been going around the country talking to local authorities around medication adherence and how that impacts on adult social care. Because I think if you do an internet search for the cost of the NHS on medication non-adherence, the information out there is absolutely massive. We often hear about the quoted figure of £500 million worth of medicines wasted each year. The number of readmissions to hospital, people not taking their medication properly, is over 1 million, and again that's estimated to be £500 million a year. That doesn't include any of the post-discharge costs of the NHS in regards of specialist care, community nursing, GP home visits, etc., post that discharge. But if you can find information around adult social care and the cost to that budget, there's very little, if anything at all. But if you think about that patient journey, as their health declines, if they go into hospital, they're discharged from hospital, they require a basic level of social care package. But if they can't get to grips with their medication, then they're going to ping pong between health and social care as their health declines. And the ability to perhaps talk about, to use methods to keep them adherent helps you, as Andy Begley mentioned this morning when he was talking about prevention, keeps them towards that top half of that graph. So actually, if you're keeping them healthy, keeping them living at home for longer, then less likely to tap into or less quickly going to decline into using those more expensive services both in health and social care. And when we're talking to authorities, some authorities are paying for domiciliary care companies to go out and prompt for medication visits, and that ranges anywhere between £9 and today we've been told £18 a visit. So if you're having 3 or 4 of those visits a day, that costs really do rapidly rise. But a number of authorities, in the way that the budgeting is happening now, are saying that they're not going to provide medication prompt visits anymore. When if you think about the preventative measures, then obviously that kind of doesn't help those people in that top half. If the adherence is an issue, they're going to decline more rapidly. So what's in place to provide it? And the costs are extreme, so it's about providing a solution, and we've got a different solution there. I'm sure there are others around there, but we've got a solution that we think kind of fills that gap, that enables using a digital technology to help people living more independently. It's more expensive, perhaps, than traditional telecare way of monitoring people and supporting people with technology. And just to kind of give you an idea as to how that stacks up, because what we do find is that for our solution, there is very much a return on investment. So our device is £150. Our weekly service from the pharmacy is £35 a week. And if we have that monitored, so if anything happens, then a phone call can take place to provide support to someone remotely, an additional £5 a week. So if I take an example of Newcastle City Council, he said, who I did a freedom of information request back in beginning of, over 12 months ago now, and they told me that in October 2016, they provided medication prompt visits for 196 people at a cost of an average of £234 a week. So if you pro-rata that up, that's just under £2.4 million. If we deduct the cost of a Bidose Connect solution at £40 a week, monitored, that would leave £199. So £194. So if you pro-rata that up, that's a saving of over £1 million per 100 users per annum. So there is technologies out there that have the ability to identify savings for adult social care, and also the magnificent knock-on effects for benefits for the health service as well. So we're on the level floor. We're just outside the lifts. If anybody's interested in that, come and have a look at our solution. I'm more than happy to show you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Bryn. Thank you. Okay, let me just go through a couple of things that we've got going on the different floors, because we're lucky enough to have all of the theatre for today, and it just is astounding. People keep telling me about different things that they've visited. Somebody got to walk the plank a little bit earlier and got so worried that they took the virtual reality straight off without setting foot on the plank. So I quite like that. And there's also, on the ground floor, Dementia virtual tour bus. Now, you need to book your slot for that, but I can't recommend it enough to go and feel like what it's, to have your senses changed or altered to make it feel perhaps as close as we can to what we understand of dementia. And I think sometimes, like we hear the personal stories here today, sometimes you set foot into somebody else's shoes and all of a sudden you're starting to think of solutions. And you look at the brains that are here today, it's quite astounding, all the minds that we've got and all the potential solutions that we've got as well. There's also a Beacon Vision bus, so you can find out what it feels like to lose your sight. On the ground floor, I said about walking the plank, there's driver simulators as well. You can have a go at printing with a 3D printer. First floor, we've got the bridge inside the igloo, which is amazing. I was in there earlier, and it was like they put the beach up and you could hear it. And I was on holiday, and it was lovely. So go and have a look at that. The Wild Strawberry is not for eating. It's a wonderful project where they're recording 5,000 voices, and they need your voice to be part of that as well. It's looking at people who were lost in the First World War, and each person can do one name to make sure that we keep their individuality. So if that's something that you can be part of, that would be brilliant. That's if you're wandering around today. There's so much more as well, but I'll tell you about that as we go through. Now, moving on, we're going to hear from our next keynote speaker, sponsored by Green Sustainable Product Company, and it is Charlie McKay. Make him welcome, please.
Okay, hello, and I want to talk about data. A fellow this morning was saying how data was really interesting, and it's delightful to be somewhere where people really do find data exciting. I go to health data standards meetings, and we have a geek fest for a whole week of people who just care about healthcare data, and it's quite a rare treat. My background is that I used to develop GP systems and hospital systems, and then around the millennium, I worked on the GP record transfer project, so getting a GP record out of one system into another. And we thought that once we'd done that, once we got all the data that a GP holds in a format that could be moved into another system, that would pretty much solve the care coordination problem. That if you could export GP data and share little bits of it with the other bits of the health system, that would be enough to solve the healthcare interoperability problem. We managed to get GP records from one system to another. We certainly didn't solve the healthcare interoperability problem. And the reason for that is there's a lot more to sharing data than just getting it in the right format, but that is a requirement. So what I wanted to talk about today was the variety. There are sort of a number of challenges when you're dealing with healthcare data. One is that healthcare happens locally. The processes, the relationships are local. There's some bits of healthcare that have to be managed and chosen and decided locally. But illness itself is a global phenomenon. When you have asthma, it's the same experience whether you're in England or in Australia or in South Africa. And there's stuff that happens nationally in terms of policies and procedures and regulations, and also funding if you're looking at the NHS. So we've got these sort of three tiers of decision-making and process design. There's stuff, the process of having asthma is the same across the world. The way the NHS wants it to be treated and deals with it is a national level thing. What happens in Broseley needs to be decided in Broseley, and the same in Shrewsbury, and the same in every different community. The other thing about health that's really important and is becoming more apparent is that most of it happens outside of the health service. 80 to 90% of the determinants of health are things that happen outside of healthcare. So if we care about each other's health, caring about the NHS isn't enough. We need to care about how do we look after each other, how do we encourage each other to be healthy, how do we help each other to be healthy outside of the health service. And the other thing is that if we are ill, almost all the time we are ill outside of the health service. If you've got diabetes, you spend very little time in the health service, but you're ill all the time. So again, how do we help that experience? How do we make that experience as good as possible? Finally, more data was created last year than in the whole of history before that. The same is going to be true next year, and the same the year after. So if we look at how we deal with health data, looking at what we did last year or 3 years ago is kind of irrelevant. What we need to do is say, what can we do with the data that's going to be emerging this year, next year, and the year after? So we need to be looking at the different pathways, the different ways of working and helping each other that can use that data. And also can use it consistently. So not just do something in Broseley and then do something else in Shrewsbury and something else in Telford and something else in South Africa. If we can do the same thing the same way across the world or across the nation or across Shropshire, that level of consistency allows adoption at scale. And as technology changes very quickly, we need those data standards to provide a framework for innovation on top of it. On there. So this is the social determinants of health and the health in all policies. So two aspects there. We get ill because of things that happen outside of the health service and across the piece. And if we want to address healthcare, both addressing the causes of health, but also mitigating ill health when it happens, it needs to happen in housing, education, and across the piece. And that's what the whole of this conference is about, but that's a well-recognised problem. Within the UK and the NHS, there's an initiative looking at standards for child health. So what are the things that have to happen to a child at a national level, every child in the country, at the point you're born, there's a certain number of tests that have to happen, and then there's a process that you follow, a set of pathways that you follow as you go through to preschool and then school. And because people move around, it's really important that that can be tracked at a national level, not just in the local hospital. So there's a set of standards that have been developed to support that at a national level that need to be implemented locally. The messaging that's been developed to support that is using international standards, the same standards that are supported by the Apple Health Kit, and at commodity level, so it can be done across the piece. And there's an event service which can be used then to notify whoever's subscribed to those messages about a particular child, so that there's a consistent way of managing those flows. Why is that important? Because that event service could be used for anything. So at a national level within the NHS, there's an event service where you could say, these 5 people need to know about me, I can plug into that, give permission for that to happen, and it happens across the piece. The same can happen with your telehealth at home. So we need to look at ways that these generic problems, how do I notify my next of kin or my neighbours that something's happened? Let's have one solution for that, or converged solutions, so that we can just reuse a commodity approach to that kind of sharing. In practice, we design these pathways with post-it notes and ad hoc because it needs to be done locally. A chunk of it does need to be done locally. But there's a way of doing that using standards. So we take those locally developed design pathways, put them into a standard format, and then they can be exchanged and compared and plugged into those commodity event services. Why does that matter? So taking another example, I talked about child health, looking at asthma. If you've got asthma, then, so 10% of people have asthma, 1 million children have asthma. One of the things you should have is a plan in your pocket which says, this is what I do when I have a step up, I have an incident, and this is what I do in a crisis. So if I have an incident, then I take my preventer inhaler, my emergency inhaler, and I take 6 puffs. That simple piece of information needs to be shared with anyone who's looking after a child or with anyone who's caring for someone with asthma. There isn't a standard representation for that, and only about 25% of people actually have it. That's the sort of thing that could be put into an app, shared as information in one of those event services, so that patients could enter that themselves, agree who they want to share it with, get that in a standard format, and it could be shared across the piece. Oops. So this is just looking at the pathways that support that process, again expressed in the standard format. But how do we get adoption of these standards? And this has kind of been my problem that I've been worrying about over the last few years. It's fine to define standards for sharing data within the health service. If we're going to get rapid adoption of new solutions, you need to have test data, you need to have example data. You can't test things on real patients' data because it's private, it's sensitive information. At the moment, there's no way of having that test sample data which people can use to illustrate their solutions. So what we've done is taken those pathways, created a simulated population for an area, run the population through the pathways, and generate the event log, so that we then have an event log of all the incidents that happened to those people, so that we can then generate the outputs that you'd see. So as you run through that simulation, we can then generate the outputs and the events that would happen to those patients as they move through or have their asthma experiences. Doesn't matter particularly what's on the graph. What matters is there was no real patient data used to generate it. So the issue I mentioned at the beginning, that the data we see next year and the year after doesn't exist yet. The only way to create test data and prototype data to be able to test the applications we're going to use is by generating the data off pathways and simulations. And why does this matter? It matters, Well, how does this help? It helps because we take the guidelines, the decisions, the local clinical audit, the local policy documents. From that, we pull out who are the cohorts that we care about, what are the touch points, when do we bump into these people, when does something happen for these people, what are the interventions we do at those touch points. So folk were talking about earlier, the alarm goes off, then what do? Do you call a neighbour? Do you call a friend? Do you call the health service? What are the risks? What are the outcomes we care about? We identify those, we put them in to the pathways, the simulation, and generate a fake digital exhaust. And that can then be compared to exactly what happens in the real world, where you've got the messy reality of people being ill, dealing with the health service, and generating health records and metrics. And those two are equivalents at the top, which gives us an opportunity to validate and test these policies and processes in a simulated world rather than just sucking it and see in the real world. So we get better quality documents, plans, and strategies in the middle here. Using an information architecture that's consistent, we can contest that through the simulated digital exhaust, and so be confident that these experiences, as we start putting more digital stuff into our lives, will actually work and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Charlie McKay from Ramsey Systems. Now, I'm a little aware, looking at the time, that we are ahead of schedule. So I could stand here and tell you all the different things that you should go and see. But actually, I wondered if you wanted to pop and go and see them on all the different floors and go and experience something that you haven't done yet. And then we could meet back here at 2:40, where you can hear from Architectonicus Limited. I've been practicing, nailed it. So 2:40, we'll meet back here, and then we'll find out about architectonic practice. Okay, thank you.